Well, what a surprise running into you here, all the way out in this corner of the galaxy. The name's Dylan Harrison, Senior Anthropological Observer, though you'd probably know me better as a human watcher, at least if you're one of the common folk. I used to work for the Galactic Council archives, but these days you can call me an independently employed individual. Or, if you prefer the more honest version, fired and blacklisted across 17 star systems. Care to hear why? 3 words, I told the truth. But Dylan, you're probably thinking, isn't truth-telling part of your job? And you'd be right. Clause 7, paragraph 4 of the Observer's Oath clearly states, report all findings with unwavering accuracy and objectivity. What they conveniently forget to mention, however, is the unwritten clause. Unless your findings make the council look utterly ridiculous. That's what landed me in hot water. Which brings me to the humans, by far my favorite species in this so-called civilized galaxy I was assigned to document Earth's exile. A routine punishment. Really, the council hands them out like candy at a hatchling's naming ceremony. Too aggressive, too unpredictable, too potentially destabilizing to the established order. So there I was, doing what was supposed to be a simple observation of yet another species doomed to decline once cut off from galactic support. My equipment was safely packed into my observation vessel, hovering above that beautiful blue-green planet, following the Council's rules to a T. Can't have the primitive humans detecting our advanced technology now, can we? Madame Draynor, my supervisor, put on her best sympathetic face during the assignment briefing, her 4 eye stalks drooping just enough to make her concern look genuine. They'll be back to burning fossil fuels in a decade, she said, her voice dripping with that rehearsed sympathy the Draynor are so famous for. Record their regression carefully, Dylan. Future generations must learn from their mistakes. I nodded, of course. 23 solar cycles as an observer teaches you when to hold your tongue. But between you and me, I had my doubts from the start. There was something about humans that the Council's reports failed to capture entirely. Something about their chaotic entertainment, their fractured yet oddly resilient networks, and that strange mix of self-destructive impulses paired with breathtaking innovation. The Council only saw the surface, a species barely united, still fighting over resources, beliefs, and even what sounds make for good music. But what they missed was that elusive spark, the inexplicable quality that made humans both infuriating and fascinating at the same time. So I observed. For years, I watched. I recorded their reactions to the Council's announcement of their exile, the shock, the anger, the fear, but then, laughter. Yes, you heard that right. They laughed. Not all at once, of course. Humans never do anything in perfect harmony, which absolutely drives hive mind species up the wall. But over time, the response shifted. Fine, if the aliens don't want to play with us, we'll start our own club, complete with blackjack and pizza. I'm still a bit unclear on what blackjack or pizza has to do with diplomacy, but that was the general vibe. I should have seen it coming. The warning signs were all there, hidden in their bizarre fiction. Those movies and TV shows where humans repeatedly overcame impossible odds, defied superior forces, and thumbed their noses at established norms. But like so many of my esteemed colleagues on the Council, I underestimated them. We all did. And that, my curious friend, is how I ended up witnessing and documenting the Council's most spectacular miscalculation in 8,000 years of history. So, grab whatever keeps your species hydrated, get comfortable, and let me tell you the real story of humanity's exile. More importantly, let me tell you what happened afterward. The Council would love for this story to disappear, which is exactly why it needs to be told. Now let's talk about how humanity earned their one-way ticket to Isolation Town, shall we? It all started, as these things often do, with a misunderstanding. The Galactic Council had been monitoring Earth for centuries, a standard protocol for pre-FTL, faster-than-light civilizations. Humans were classified as potentially viable for future integration, which in Council speak means we'll check back when they're less of a mess. The plan was simple. Wait until they'd figured out those little problems like war, poverty, and reality television. But then, as humans are so fond of doing, they surprised everyone. In 2047, Dr. Emily Carter, a brilliant physicist, terrible poker player, and collector of vintage rubber ducks, accidentally discovered viable faster-than-light travel while trying to develop a more efficient coffee maker. No, I'm not joking. She wanted her caffeine faster and ended up revolutionizing interstellar travel. The Council's Predictive Behavior Division collectively had a meltdown. This wasn't supposed to happen for at least another century, High Counselor Zane Roth screeched, slamming all 6 of his appendages on the ancient council table. Their psychological profiles indicated they're nowhere near ready. But ready or not, humanity had just crashed the Galactic Party. Protocol dictated that first contact be established immediately to prevent humans from accidentally wandering into the territories of less diplomatic species. The Council dispatched Ambassador Gavin Blake, renowned for her patience and cultural sensitivity. Poor Gavin, she tried her best. The first meeting between humanity and the galactic community was supposed to be dignified. Instead, it devolved into what humans would call a PR nightmare. When President David Ross asked if Gavin's translucent skin meant she could see what he had for lunch, followed by Trade Minister Ethan Cooper asking for a selfie with the alien dude, it was clear things weren't going according to plan. Gavin remained remarkably composed, even when Secretary General Mason Grant suggested an impromptu karaoke session to break the ice. But the real trouble began during the preliminary trade negotiations. It seemed humanity had no concept of respecting technological development tiers. They wanted everything: faster ships, advanced medicine, weapons technology, and they wanted it yesterday. But they were offering unlimited access to our cultural archives in return. Ava Parker had access to thousands of years of art, music, and literature, yet Ambassador Gavin found himself explaining that while Shakespeare and the works of beyond were undoubtedly valuable, they couldn't be exchanged for advanced planetary defense systems that the Kroganar had spent millennia developing. The breaking point came during the formal submission of Earth's application to join the Galactic Union. Humanity had prepared a showcase to highlight their unique contributions to galactic society, intending to display their creativity and innovative spirit. Instead, what they unleashed could only be called absolute chaos. The small sample of Earth's internet they uploaded to the Council's central database sent shockwaves through the system, crashing data hubs across 17 sectors. What was supposed to be a harmless demonstration of human cuisine resulted in 3 council species suffering immediate digestive distress. And the less said about the accidental inclusion of a video documenting human mating rituals in the cultural package, the better. Trust me, the council deliberated for precisely 3.7 minutes before making a unanimous decision to exile Earth and quarantine the entire solar system for their own protection. The official statement read, "In order to ensure the continued stability of galactic civilization, humanity will be temporarily excluded from interstellar commerce, communication, and travel." Of course, the temporary part was tucked away in the subsection 47C of the document, but the reality of their permanent isolation was made abundantly clear with the installation of automated warning beacons scattered throughout the system, broadcasting in 342 languages. Danger, stay away, unpredictable species, containment zone. And just like that, humanity's brief flirtation with interstellar connection was cut short before they had even begun to find their rhythm. At least, that's what the Council thought. Earth's response to the exile was something the Council never saw coming. You'd expect a species to descend into despair, mass panic, or even a global identity crisis after being rejected by the entire galactic community. That's the usual pattern. Take the Ryvoth, for instance. They were quarantined for releasing flesh-eating plants across 3 systems, and their civilization collapsed within a decade. Now they live in caves, scribbling angsty poetry about photosynthesis. But humans? Let me tell you about their reaction after the council ships left and the quarantine beacons switched on. I was expecting months of worldwide panic. Instead, do you know what happened? A party, an actual global celebration. "Screw those pompous space bureaucrats," President David Ross declared in an emergency broadcast, looking like she might have been sampling the emergency whiskey reserves. "We got to space on our own, and we'll conquer the stars on our own, too." The crowd's response was deafening, actual roars like predatory animals. It was terrifying, and yet somehow inspiring. Within just 48 hours, every major Earth city was hosting celebrations with names like Independence from ET and Cosmic Breakup Bash. My favorite, though? "Sorry, we're too cool for your lame space club." Alcohol flowed, music blared, and humans danced in the streets beneath banners that graphically illustrated where the council could insert their quarantine beacons. I watched in stunned silence. My behavioral prediction algorithms malfunctioned repeatedly, unable to align with the response I was witnessing. It's just like prom night all over again. said some random person on their global information network. It made no sense to me at first, but it triggered millions of agreement responses. Then, something even more remarkable happened. Unity. Not the artificial, forced kind of unity imposed by hive mind directives on member worlds, but something raw and powerful. Former rival nations began collaborating in ways they never had before. Research and development budgets skyrocketed overnight. The space exploration program, once split among competing nations, unified into the United Earth Space Initiative. Humans and their obsession with acronyms, they love them. Jason Harper, once Russia's top aerospace engineer, stood before the first global meeting and said, "The Council taught us one important truth. Out there, we are not Russians, Americans, Chinese, or Nigerians. We are humans, and apparently, we're the troublemakers of the galaxy." She paused, and laughter rippled through the crowd. Good. The universe needs troublemakers. I nearly fell out of my observation chair. Did she just embrace the very label that got them exiled? But the true shock came 6 months later. My monitoring equipment detected unusual activity near the quarantine beacons. Initially, I thought it was just typical boundary testing. Newly isolated species often probe their limits. Then I realized what they were really doing. These brilliant, audacious lunatics weren't trying to disable the beacons. They were reverse engineering them. Think about it, Dr. Lucas Anderson said during a classified meeting, and I definitely wasn't supposed to be monitoring it. These beacons contain advanced FTL communication technology, gravimetric stabilizers, and power generation systems far beyond what we're capable of right now. They're basically gift-wrapped textbooks just sitting on our doorstep. Within a year, human scientists had extracted enough data from the quarantine system to propel their technology forward by nearly a century. They weren't just studying the beacons, they were improving on them. And most alarmingly, they were planning to surpass them. Even more extraordinary was Project Whisper, humanity's greatest act of cosmic defiance. All the while maintaining the appearance of compliance, they meticulously engineered tiny gaps in the quarantine field, just large enough for their newly developed stealth probe to slip through. "If they won't let us join their sandbox," USC Commander Ethan Cooper told his team, "we'll build a better one, and we won't invite them to play." The Council, blinded by their own arrogance, never imagined that the quarantine beacons, intended to be their containment measure, would become humanity's greatest teachers. It was breathtaking arrogance, even by Council standards. By the third year of Earth's exile, humanity had officially entered what they called Phase 2 expansion. While still publicly pretending to be isolated, they were secretly preparing for something unprecedented. My official reports during this period, let's just say they were, shall we say, creatively edited. The Council received reports showing a civilization begrudgingly accepting its punishment, occasionally testing the boundaries, but ultimately resigned to its fate. Meanwhile, I documented the truth. Humanity wasn't just surviving, they were thriving. They were building an empire. If you ever want to motivate humanity, just tell them they can't do something. Honestly, it's like their entire species is fueled by spite, curiosity, and a generous splash of hold my beer. Year 5 of the exile marked the beginning of what humans would later call the silent expansion. While the Council smugly believed Earth was securely contained, humanity had already set up their first extrasolar outpost on Proxima Centauri b, or New Auckland, as the primarily Kiwi colonization team decided to name it. Very original humans. The Council expected humanity to stay put. "Fine, we'll wave at their monitoring satellites," Colonel Maiwan told the first wave of colonists. "Meanwhile, we'll be out here building something they can't even begin to imagine." Their stealth technology was, frankly, genius. Not because it was exceptionally advanced, it wasn't, but because of its sheer simplicity. Instead of trying to develop perfect cloaking devices, humans designed their ships to mimic space debris. As a result, the Council's scanners mistook them for nothing more than metallic asteroids or long-forgotten satellite fragments. "We don't need to be invisible," Dr. Cole Harrison, head of the USC Stealth Division, explained during a development meeting. "We just need to be boring. Nobody pays attention to space junk." Meanwhile, back on Earth, factories were working around the clock, but not in the usual places you'd expect. Humanity had relocated their most critical manufacturing centers underwater and underground, in areas the Council's orbital scans couldn't reach. The subsea facility beneath the Pacific, known as the Atlantis Complex, became their largest shipyard. The irony of building starships underwater wasn't lost on humans, who have an appreciation for absurdity that most galactic species simply don't get. If anyone from the Council could see this, they'd think we've completely lost our minds, laughed engineering director Sophia Lane as she observed massive hull segments being assembled by robots beneath millions of gallons of water. And that's exactly why this works, she added with a grin. By year 7, humanity had established 11 colonies across 7 star systems, all connected by what they called the Whisper Network, a series of quantum entanglement communication relays that operated without detectable emissions. While the Council's communication systems broadcasted proudly across subspace frequencies, announcing their presence to anyone who might be listening, human communications were like ghosts. There, but not there. It was the perfect strategy. The Council's greatest mistake, among many, was assuming that quarantined species would follow predictable development patterns. They expected humans to focus inward, developing their solar system while occasionally testing the quarantine boundaries. Their monitoring systems were specifically designed to detect that. What they didn't anticipate was a species that completely ignored the established rules of empire building. Take the Kroganar, for example. Their imperial expansion was a systematic grand affair, planet by planet, system by system, creating dominance with massive structures and enormous planetary monuments. Even the subtle Vraxial marked their territories with easily detectable energy signatures. But humans? They built small, efficient colonies that blended into natural formations or stayed entirely underground. Their energy signatures were cleverly disguised as background radiation. Their mining operations targeted asteroids and planetoids rather than planets, leaving minimal evidence of extraction. "We're not building an empire for show," said director Jason Harper during the 10th anniversary of Earth's exile. "We're building it to last." The real stroke of genius came in year 12 when humanity launched Operation Breadcrumb. Instead of expanding outward in predictable patterns from Earth, they established isolated colonies in seemingly random systems, focusing on resource-rich but strategically unremarkable locations. Only then did they begin expanding from these scattered points, creating multiple growing networks instead of a single detectable pattern. By year 15, United Earth was a misnomer. They were now the Silent Federation, 29 inhabited worlds, over 100 outposts, and a fleet that operated entirely beneath the Council's notice. All this expansion required resources, of course, tremendous amounts of them. But instead of strip mining planets, which would have raised immediate alarms, humans perfected asteroid harvesting and developed something called stellar tap technology, drawing energy directly from stars, without needing the massive structures that other civilizations used. Efficiency born of necessity became their unofficial motto. The galaxy is vast, and the Council's attention? Limited. While they focused on maintaining the quarantine around Earth and monitoring the solar system for any escape attempts, humanity was quietly building a sprawling, invisible empire right under their noses. And the Council never suspected a thing. Well, almost never. There was that one incident with the space tacos, but that's a story for another time. Then came day 20, years, 4 months, and 13 days after Earth's exile began. The galaxy received a rather rude awakening, and by rude, I mean absolutely glorious. I had front row seats to the entire magnificent spectacle, and let me tell you, I've never laughed so hard in my 300-year existence. It all started with the Xelian Trade Summit, the pompous annual gathering where Council species exchanged resources, technologies, and elaborate insults disguised as diplomatic pleasantries. Counselor Zane Roth was mid-speech, droning on about the continued prosperity of galactic civilization under the Council's watch, when every communication system on every screen across Council space activated at the same time. Across every planet, on every ship, appeared the same image: a human woman dressed in what they call a business suit, sitting calmly at a desk with Earth visible through a window behind her. "Greetings, Galactic Council and citizens of the greater galactic community," she began, her voice perfectly modulated. "This is Director Savannah Brooks of the Silent Federation, formerly known as United Earth. We hope we're not interrupting anything important." You should have seen Zane Roth. All 6 of his appendages froze mid-gesture, his central eye twitching violently. The Joller delegates began murmuring in confusion, and the Nihili eye stalks were practically tied in knots as they frantically exchanged glances. 2 decades ago, you declared our species unfit for galactic society, Savannah continued, the faintest hint of a smile playing at the corner of her lips. You quarantined our world and left us to, I believe the official wording was, contemplate our primitive inadequacies. She paused, and that smile widened just a fraction. Well, we've done some contemplating. We've also done some building, some exploring, and some expanding. As Director Savannah Brooks spoke, the galactic navigation system suddenly lit up with new signals, thousands upon thousands of them. Human ships, stations, and outposts began to appear on scanners as they deactivated their stealth systems in perfect synchronization. By our latest census, Savannah continued, her tone casual as if discussing a routine weather report, the Silent Federation now spans 43 inhabited worlds, 172 outposts, and a fleet of approximately 11,000 vessels spread across 78 star systems. The Grand Chamber exploded into absolute chaos. Counselor Zix of the Arterian Emini actually fainted, his ceremonial headpiece clattering to the floor in dramatic fashion. Several minority representatives began wailing their traditional songs of impending doom. The Thix delegation, they literally vanished, teleported out in pure panic. Savannah remained calm, waiting for the uproar to subside, that slight, confident smile never leaving her lips. "We're not here to threaten anyone," she finally said, once the noise had calmed. "Quite the opposite, actually. Today we are extending an invitation. The Silent Federation is opening diplomatic relations with all species willing to participate. We're establishing trade routes, cultural exchanges, and scientific collaborations, all effective immediately." She leaned forward slightly, her expression softening with sincerity. The quarantine, in hindsight, was perhaps the greatest gift you could have given us. It forced us to innovate, to unite, and to become something greater than we ever could have as just another council client state. For that, you have our heartfelt gratitude. Then, with a simple gesture, Savannah made the ultimate revelation. The view behind her expanded, unveiling a massive space station, a wheel-like structure with Earth visible beyond it. "We're calling this Unity Station," Savannah announced. "As of today, it is open to all peaceful visitors, regardless of species or council affiliation. No technology restrictions, no cultural censorship, no hierarchical access based on developmental tiers. Knowledge will flow freely among equals." You could almost hear the sound of ancient council protocols crumbling into dust across the galaxy. Several council members began urgently consulting legal archives, scrambling for precedent, searching for procedures, anything that might help them make sense of what was unfolding. But there was no precedent, of course. No species had ever escaped quarantine, let alone thrived during it. "We look forward to welcoming you all," Savannah concluded with a gracious nod. "And don't worry about the old quarantine beacons. We've repurposed them into navigation aids for your convenience. Safe travels." The transmission ended, leaving the entire council chamber in stunned silence. Then came the most unexpected response, from Trill Vader, the ancient Kareth representative who hadn't spoken at a council meeting in over a century. His laughter began, a deep, rumbling sound that echoed through the chamber, filling the air with an infectious energy. "Well," he wheezed between fits of laughter, "it seems we might have underestimated the primates." The greatest understatement in galactic history. The 6 months following humanity's grand reveal were absolute pandemonium, gloriously entertaining pandemonium. The Galactic Council, long regarded as the pillar of order and stability, found itself facing an entirely new and uncontrollable reality: irrelevance. Their first attempt to regain control? Sanctions. But nobody complied. They tried designating human space as a prohibited zone, only for Unity Station to double in size. They even threatened military action, only to discover that numerous member species had already signed independent treaties with the Silent Federation. "The Council exists to serve galactic civilization," announced the Thorax matriarch, historically one of the Council's staunchest allies. Not the other way around. If they cannot adapt to the changing realities, perhaps it is time for new leadership. Watching the Council's authority crumble faster than water on a neutron star was, I must admit, deeply satisfying, especially after they'd spent centuries micromanaging every aspect of interspecies relations through their infamous developmental tier system. For those who are unfamiliar, the Council classified all species into 9 developmental tiers, determining which technologies they could access, which regions they could settle, and even which species they could trade with, all for the supposed greater good. Humanity's approach was refreshingly different. "We have one rule," explained Federation Ambassador Ryan Mitchell, son of the former president, during the first open diplomatic forum. Don't be a jerk, everything else is negotiable. Though it seemed simple on the surface, this philosophy became the foundation of a revolutionary approach to galactic diplomacy. The Silent Federation established open exchange hubs where technologies, arts, philosophies, and sciences could flow freely between species. No developmental restrictions, no cultural censorship. The response was overwhelming. Species that had been relegated to lower tiers for generations flocked to these hubs, eager to share their advancements. The Aloth, skilled in bioengineering but held back by their aggressive tendencies and classified as Tier 4, shared breakthroughs that revolutionized medicine across multiple worlds. The Jalkaran, whose vibration-based art had once been deemed disruptive, now saw their work celebrated in human galleries. We're not building an empire in the traditional sense, Director Savannah Brooks explained during a controversial address to former council worlds. We're building a network, a community of equals, where contribution matters more than history or biology. This approach directly challenged the council's fundamental premise that galactic civilization needed careful management by more advanced species to prevent chaos and conflict. Humanity argued precisely the opposite, that true advancement came from unrestricted exchange between different perspectives. Within a year, the galaxy had effectively split into two factions, those who still adhered to the old council system and those who embraced the Federation's open approach. The split wasn't along expected lines either. Ancient species like the Trellix, once core to the Council's founding, established embassies at Unity Station. Meanwhile, some younger species clung desperately to the Council's structure, terrified by the unpredictability of humanity's vision. The Council made one final, desperate attempt to reassert control. They convened an emergency session of all species, proposing a reformed tier system with greater flexibility and more representation. The vote was scheduled for what humans would call a Tuesday. By Monday, nearly 60% of the member species had formally withdrawn from the Council. The age of arbitrary restrictions is over, declared the Hive consensus of the Ryvath, once neutral in galactic politics. We choose collaboration over control. The Council didn't collapse in dramatic fashion. It simply faded into irrelevance. The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council grew emptier with each passing cycle, its once absolute pronouncements increasingly ignored. In its place, something new began to take shape, a chaotic yet vibrant network of interconnected species, sharing, arguing, trading, occasionally fighting, but ultimately growing together, free from the artificial constraints of a hierarchical system. The galactic community, they called it. Not an empire, not a federation, not a council, just a community. And it all started because the council thought isolating humanity would somehow make the galaxy safer. Talk about unintended consequences. So, there you have it. The real story of how a bunch of stupid primates, pardon me humans, turned their exile into the greatest power shift since the quantum schism of the Third Era. And you're hearing it from me, Dylan Harrison, the only observer who documented the whole magnificent mess. These days, I make my living touring the galaxy, telling this story to packed venues on hundreds of worlds. Of course, the Council tried to suppress my records. They claimed they were exaggerated, dramatized, historically inaccurate, rich, coming from the same folks who officially recorded the Aruan Rebellion as a minor disagreement over taxation policy. Nothing says minor disagreement like three suns going supernova, right? I've been asked countless times why I risked my career, and my life for that matter, just to record humanity's true journey. The answer is simple. I saw something extraordinary when I witnessed it, something worth preserving accurately for future generations. What made humanity's response to exile so remarkable wasn't just their technology. Sure, their stealth systems were clever, and their quantum communication network was impressive, but other species have developed similar technologies over the centuries. What truly set humans apart was their perspective, their stubborn refusal to accept limitations, their bizarre, almost reckless ability to turn setbacks into opportunities. Look at Unity Station. It's now the busiest hub in the galaxy, with over 30 million visitors daily from 17,000 species. The station's architecture is a glorious mishmash of styles, human ingenuity blended seamlessly with contributions from hundreds of cultures. Just last week, I witnessed Tharnar crystal singers performing alongside human jazz musicians, creating sounds so beautiful that a Varoran philosopher dissolved into tears of joy. Apparently, that's how they express aesthetic appreciation, sincere, but emotional nonetheless. 25 years ago, Could anyone have predicted that humanity's exile would lead to the greatest cultural renaissance in recorded history? That technologies once hoarded by high-tier species would be spread across the galaxy, improving countless lives? That the rigid hierarchies maintaining stability for millennia would crumble so quickly? The Council certainly didn't see it coming. Most of them have retreated to their homeworlds, clinging to outdated protocols and issuing decrees no one pays attention to. It's a sad end for what were once mighty administrators, but perhaps an inevitable one. Systems that refuse to adapt eventually collapse under their own weight. I still observe humanity, though, unofficially now. Old habits die hard, you know? They continue to surprise me daily. Just last month, I saw something incredible on Proxima Centauri b, the first human colony world. A delegation of Threxian methane breathers from the galactic rim was having issues with their environmental suits during a diplomatic meeting. Rather than postponing the talks, the human representatives simply moved the entire conference into methane-filled chambers they'd constructed overnight, donning protective gear themselves. It seemed easier to adapt ourselves than ask our guests to suffer through suit failures, Governor Arjun Mehta explained with a shrug, as if building an entirely new government facility for alien physiology was simply part of their regular routine. That's quintessentially human, isn't it? Adapting themselves rather than expecting the universe to change for them. It's the exact opposite of the Council's approach. And maybe that's the greatest lesson here. The Council saw diversity as something to be managed, controlled, and divided into tidy developmental tiers. Humanity saw it as something to celebrate, connect, and weave into something much greater than the sum of its parts. Is the galaxy perfect now? Please don't be naive. The community faces challenges daily. Cultural misunderstandings still occur. Resources are still contested. Some former Council species refuse to participate at all. The Dravid conglomerate still insists that humans are merely elaborate biological automatons created by the true masters lurking in the shadows. Conspiracy theories exist in every species, it seems. But for the first time in millennia, galactic civilization is evolving organically, rather than following some rigid, predetermined structure. It's messy, it's unpredictable, it's chaotic, sure, but it's also more vibrant, innovative, and alive than it's been in thousands of years. As for me, I've found my place in this new order. My documentation of humanity's journey has been officially added to the Great Archive on New Alexandria, humanity's monument to knowledge, orbiting their homeworld. My observations will be preserved for future generations alongside works from thousands of species. Not bad for a disgraced former Council observer, right? So if there's one thing to take away from this tale, it's this. Never underestimate a species that can turn exile into opportunity, restrictions into innovation, and isolation into strength. Never ever underestimate humans. Oh, and if you're from the Council's remaining enforcement division and you happen to be listening to this, yes, I was the one who reprogrammed your diplomatic shuttle to play human disco music during your last official visit to Centaur. Some opportunities for mischief are just too perfect to resist. This is Dylan Harrison, signing off, until the next unbelievable chapter in this ongoing story begins.